At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
I'm doing everything I can. And stop calling me Shirley.
The center has to be at least 3 times bigger than this.
All right, it's another edition of Sincerely Unqualified. I'm Kevin. As always, we have Winnie, my fearless co-host. Today, we have The 40-Year-Old Virgin, another Apatow movie. We just can't get enough of them, apparently. I mean, I knew I couldn't, but, you know, we're reviewing them like crazy, so.
I know. I mean, there's a reason for that. It's not a mistake. It's definitely,
It's according to us, one of the best.
He's got the
filmmakers
goods
of all time. Yeah,
absolutely. Apatow. This is our pod. Apatow.
Oh, there you go. I'm gonna listen back and decide if I hated that a lot or if I actually liked it.
That works.
Little housekeeping out of the way. If you're new with us, please like, rate, subscribe, do all that good stuff. So you know when we're posting. We post every Tuesday. We try to get it in the morning. We really appreciate the support. We want to keep growing. So if you can tell your friends, if you have people that like comedy movies, anything like that, why don't you tell them, grow the pod.
Spread the word.
Help us out.
Spread the word.
Yeah.
We're here. We're here for you.
Yeah. Other than that. So we said today, 40-Year-Old Virgin, Apatow movie, Steve Carell, Judd Apatow wrote it, 2005 movie. And it's not currently on streaming, but you can rent it if you want to do a rewatch. I mean, it's absolutely worth a rewatch. I guess before we get into it, it's Thanksgiving week too, so that's another thing. Play it into your movie watching. Definitely not a Thanksgiving movie, but I think it's something that the whole family can enjoy, right?
Absolutely. I wouldn't say that there is like a comedy movie that's centric to Thanksgiving. I don't think there is one. I don't think you should make one.
Did they make one of those the one that Taylor Swift's in? I think Valentine's Day, New Year's Day.
Oh my gosh!
Have
they
we
make
not
every
made
holiday?
Did they not make one for Thanksgiving?
Okay, no. But here's the thing about that. So like, where are you gonna go with that? Like everywhere else is like these holidays. You could meet random people, blah blah blah. It's not like you're gonna fall in love with somebody at your Thanksgiving dinner. Well,
but so before, I think it would be before now, like on Twitter, it's such an easy joke. Like, oh, I'm going to battle with my uncle who's a Trump supporter. Now it's low hanging fruit. Now, if that happens, I don't want to see a single bit of it. That's way too easy. Back like 10 years ago, that would have been something interesting to explore. Probably like some family like riff, I guess.
Look,
I don't know. I feel like there's something you can do about it, but also like, Christmas alone is an entire industry. The music, movies, all of that. Thanksgiving, no one's going to be like, we need to watch this Thanksgiving movie because the holiday where we have a meal is coming up.
Yeah. I mean, when we were talking about it, and the closest thing that I could really think of to a Thanksgiving movie or like a Thanksgiving centric scene, obviously number one is Charlie Brown, if you would consider that a comedy.
Well,
but, it's a little bit of I mean, we could review Charlie Brown, but the next closest thing in my mind, for some reason, is what's the fucking movie where Bradley Cooper and
Silver Linings Playbook.
Jennifer Lawrence. Silver Linings Playbook. That's it. Yeah. So for some reason, just Robert De Niro in that movie reminds me of Thanksgiving because of his pure devotion to just sitting on the couch and watching the Eagles play. That's, to me, synonymous with Thanksgiving, just sitting on the couch for as long as possible, having no excuses needed to do it, and just gorging yourself with food and watching football. And that is just, that's
just America.
Exactly. That's just
the way we were meant to
spirit.
Late November rolls around. Yeah, we got the playoff picture coming up. Gotta pay attention to the Lions whenever they just lose on Thanksgiving.
Every single year, it's ridiculous. Also, have you been this impacted by it getting so early, like so dark, so early in the past? Have you? Because I have not.
I think last year was a huge bummer. I honestly think that like the 4 years before we were just in college. So it was like, all right, we'll do whatever. Like 4 years before that just meant that we were probably going to start drinking earlier, honestly, on the weekend. So we're just turning to watch a movie. Now that we have like work, and then
Yeah.
the worst thing about it is getting out of work and it already being dark. Like it's like you don't have a day.
Oh.
And I'm not saying anything interesting or new. I know that. I'm just airing out some grievances now that you mentioned it.
No, I know. I'm saying like it's good for being able to do stuff that we do, like watch more movies and everything like that, but it's draining. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that we have exciting things to look forward to every week,
Yeah,
like talking
yeah, at
about
least-
40-year-old virgin.
Yeah. Hopefully people listen. Yeah. The crazy thing with not the crazy thing. I think the worst thing about it getting dark though is that I like working out, most days of the week. But if I don't get a workout in, I like working out during lunch now that I'm work from home. But I'm not a morning person. But if I don't work out in the morning or afternoon, I'm not working out during the winter.
It's over.
At 5 p.m. if it's dark and I get off work, I'm not working out. I'm watching a movie. I'm watching TV. Like I'll throw on Mando.
I feel like you're a very normal person for that. Like,
Yeah, again,
when
we're not saying anything like that. Everyone says this. We know.
no, I know.
Not throwing
It's just
hot takes out
crazy.
there.
Like you look at your phone, it's 5:00, and you're like, oh, maybe I could do things, and then something kicks in the back of your mind. You're just like, nah, I don't want to do things anymore.
Yeah,
Just
no,
things
it's not
become
happening.
irrelevant.
Just not happening.
No,
Yeah.
It's fun. I mean, either way, excited for Turkey Day. Gonna watch Silver Linings Playbook, probably between the Lions losing. So we'll see how it goes. But
yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I hope everyone has a good Thanksgiving. I'm assuming that you probably celebrate it if you're in America, if you don't, whatever, then it's another day and you get off of work. So hope everyone has a good one. I think that we could probably break into 40-year-old virgin here though. It was quite a tangent. As always, we started out with basically our insights. We tried to start super general, just talk about the movie. We call it Flick Takes. It's our insights section. But honestly, mine, if we're talking super generally about the movie, this is something that I don't think I caught the first few times that I've watched this movie, or that I watched this movie, because I guess maybe I just wasn't thinking too far into it. And now when we watch these movies, I'm going back and thinking about interesting things or interesting ways to watch it. And something I didn't realize is just that you have every single type of relationship in this movie. So obviously you have a virgin starting a relationship with someone who's had experience, but obviously, in the same manner, she is an ex-married, but she has children.
She's
at a pretty old age.
let's say.
Yeah. And she has to kind of navigate that. That's something interesting to unpack, like having to deal with kids on top of being a virgin. And the same way with her, trying to balance that, figure out how to do that. But then like also even down to his friends, like his Studio City or his workers or his coworkers. Like you have Paul Rudd, who has had his heart destroyed, so you can have the classic, oh, I'm going through a breakup, even though it's 2 years. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point.
Yeah, that's
Cal, Seth Rogen's character, is just casually dating. That's not casually dating, but casually trying to have sex with people.
He's basically the human version of Bumble in this movie. He's just like
yeah, he really is.
Literally just doing whatever he wants, chatting up girls, saying the most extreme things. Like, that, I mean, if we're going to equate it to modern terms, he's Tinder and Bumble.
Yeah, I'd say that's fair. But then you have the modern day. I don't know what the modern day of this would be, but I think just cheating is cheating. But
yeah, no,
I
think
think Malco, who's like,
that stays
you
pretty
don't have
true.
any apps there? You gonna shed some knowledge on us?
Instagram DMs. He's the
there you
Instagram
go.
DMs. Yeah, absolutely.
There you go.
Or Snapchat. Either one. Just keeping it low key, but also like doing the dirty. you know,
100%.
absolutely insecure, just, you know, keeping it on the DL. If you get caught, maybe get a pass, but, you know, we'll see. But absolutely Instagram DMs and Snapchat, I'd say, for him. And then Steve Carell is just Facebook. He's just posting on Facebook constantly. I mean, just long paragraphs on Facebook.
Yeah, Steve Carell is definitely Facebook, and then you got to assume Paul Rudd's Twitter then, because everyone on Twitter is just like loves being
Psycho.
depressed, and it's like so funny if you say you have depression and anxiety, like you gotta say Paul Rudd's Twitter. I like those comparisons.
Isn't it absurd that the one place people are like, I'm depressed, and everyone's like, LOL, same, is just Twitter?
Well, no, because it's all, I don't want to get into this whole thing, but I think that that's generally a thing. And a lot of people are clinically diagnosed and everything.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of that people seeing that, like, honestly,
Yeah.
it's great that people do have an outlet. Like, if you are clinically depressed and you see someone going through it, that's great. And then you bond together. But I think there's a lot of clout just being chased after, being like,
everyone on Twitter is just a hyperbolized version of themselves. And it's just outdo the person before them saying the craziest shit.
Yeah, well, that's basically what I mean. Like, it's a hyperbolized version of the person that they saw get attention on Twitter. I don't think anyone's themselves on, like, Twitter specifically. It's just like a wasteland of people trying to be something they're not.
Absolutely. Oh, I'm gonna do one more app comparison, and then we'll go into you know, one of my flick takes. Okay, so Mooj and his boy, they're TikTok. That's TikTok. Just coming in at the random times, like saying the most absurd shit and just being hilarious. They're TikTok.
So this is another thing. This is something that I have realized, and I used to think that TikTok was just 15-year-olds dancing, and now
so much more.
That's what I mean. Like, listening to Your Mom's House, you showing me some things, like it. There is a part of TikTok that I feel like is like just a longer form Vine. Like, it's not necessarily like funny clips, but it's things that are like shocking. Like, there is some stuff on that app.
So it's Vine combined with Live Feed. Do you remember Live Feed? Like, just the uncensored crazy videos. It's like that in E-Bombs world. Won't go too deep into it because, like, it's just the craziest videos you can imagine combined with Vine energy of just like the stupidest videos. And then you get a few where it's like people doing the Charleston or whatever dance they want to do. But
who's doing the Charleston on TikTok?
Dude, bring back the Charleston. Like,
make the Charleston great again.
Absolutely. So one thing, you know, going off of you talking about the different relationships and everything in this movie and how they're all kind of exemplified, I think for me watching, you know, it might have been a bit, obviously it's throughout, but slowly figuring out, going from Paul Rudd, you see him at first, you think like, oh, he's this rational guy, you know, he seems like he's just working this job, you know, he's a casual, good person. He invited this person to play cards, you know, Steve Carell, everything like that, easygoing. Slowly but surely you figure out he's an absolute fucking psychopath.
He devolves into something he was not in the beginning.
Really just goes downhill from there.
That's not a character arc. That's like a character divot.
Yeah.
He goes back up though.
The de-evolution of Paul Rudd's character in this is, and then, so the best part for me is when you kind of realize it all. And when you finally meet Mindy Kaling, who's Amy, who's just his ex-girlfriend who he keeps talking about, you know, it's the best 4 months of my life. And then it gets to Seth Rogen's character in the dating. And he's like, you can't keep doing this to my friend. And she's just like, I changed my email. I moved. Basically, he's just stalking me at this point. And you're like, oh, okay. So he's fucking crazy.
Yeah, during that speed dating scene where you're just like, oh, well, okay, that explains it. That really is like, it hits you like a wave. At first, obviously, it's Paul Rudd. You're going to feel bad for Paul Rudd anyways. But yeah, at some point, you're like, this guy's definitely like not okay. And then I think the funny thing about that is that Paul Rudd, you at least have the first interaction when they're having coffees and you're like, oh, he's such a good guy. Like he's an actual normal person. And then with Seth Rogen and Romany Malco, it's in your face right away. Like there's something off with them, kind of like Seth Rogen like sleeping around. Whether you think that's a bad thing or a good thing, that's up to you. And then Romany Malco like sleeping around when he has a girlfriend. So there are kind of two things right away that you're like, but Paul Rudd, you just think that he has a heartbreak. Then you realize that he's like stalking Mindy Kaling.
The slow evolution from like, oh, poor guy to like, oh, geez, okay, let's relax.
Yeah, that guy needs some help.
The first thing about, oh, sorry, I was gonna the first thing about Seth Rogen that you see is when he asks like, oh, how was your weekend? And it's like, oh, we went down to Tijuana and we saw this horse fucking this girl. And you realize like, oh, it's just a horse fucking a girl. And that's when you realize within the first 15 minutes where we're headed with him. Like,
well, where we're headed with the movie too. Because like that is something that's so funny, but that's not for the faint of heart. Like
so unexpected.
It's in it, but it characterizes him so well. He's just like, like then you realize it's that is what it is. And you're just like, oh, that's too much. Like it's not like he's some insane, crazy person deviant that's like, this was awesome. He's like, no, I kind of wanted to do it to see what it was like, but like not for me. So like what I was going to say actually was that I think that his character of everyone in the movie kind of does the opposite. So he starts kind of like, oh, we kind of know where this guy is. But then I feel like he's the most redeemed at the end. Obviously, other than, I feel like Steve Carell is his own. I'm basically talking about the three friends. Like,
exactly.
Paul Rudd, sure. Romany Malco, sure. But like Seth Rogen, I think at the end comes in and kind of just solidifies himself as like a great character. And I'll be talking about him towards the end of the podcast.
Absolutely. I mean, he definitely, has, I think, one of the most redeeming arcs out of the three, because the other two kind of devolve, throughout, where it starts from Romney as kind of this playful, like maybe he's cheating, maybe he's not, maybe he's just joking around.
Oh yeah,
and
he
then
kind of
goes,
frames it like he has an open relationship, and then like
exactly.
I feel like I mean I don't remember watching it for the first time, but I think you can sniff that out right away. Like, no, he's not. He's just
it's like what do you? Yeah, exactly. I mean, the one thing that kind of, not to say takes you out of this movie, but it makes you realize where it was at the time. I'd say the only thing that kind of takes us out of this movie is really like them working at this store. Just seeing all of these old TVs. They mentioned a VCR player. Now just think about that for a second. They mentioned a VCR player.
And even though they were like literally the joke was like, you don't want a VCR player, like it's going to be dead in like a few years. It was, but that's probably why you shouldn't have written that in, like, at least to me, like, and that's even the funniest thing. It was like VCR and DVD player. Like now, honestly, like I think that those are completely obsolete, but like even if they did that in Forgetting Sarah Marshall, it would have probably been a DVD or a Blu-ray player. And then guess what? 3 years after that, those are out the window too. Obviously exaggerating, but they did a few things, and I think that's the one thing that I would say about this movie that sounds so dumb, but it just feels very much 2005, like early to mid 2000s, and I think that almost makes it a little better to me. Like,
you think so?
So, okay, if you're talking about like strict filmmaking, should they have put these things that age it in there? Probably not. It doesn't take away from the movie for me. What I feel like it kind of does is like, I think just because I've watched this movie enough and I think so fondly of it, it's like when I threw it on, I was like, it kind of like, it's like putting on like putting a warm blanket over you. But like, if that warm blanket was full of F-bombs and gratuitous amounts of boob and titty.
Like, the warmest of blankets. That's just the warm blanket.
Dude, it's like that. But seriously, it was one of those things I was watching and I was just like, I remember this or remember this. Obviously, with all these movies, I've been doing that. But it's kind of like we're rewatching it And this is the first time I've rewatched it at kind of like this age. I honestly haven't for a while, but like it just kind of feels nice. And I think the reason that it doesn't bother me, the things that age it, is just because I knew they were in there. Like once they were about to start the VCR talk, I was like, oh, here's the weird VCR scene.
Well, that's the thing that's unavoidable too in making movies is like, no matter what you do, there's going to be tells about when it was made and how it's made.
Yeah.
I think it's almost more likable that they embrace them because I mean, it's not intentional at the time. It's not like they knew in 2005, like, oh, somebody's going to be watching this shit in 15 years and say like, look at this. Wow, their TVs are so thick. It's like, no, they're not. They're thinking about the time as how can we make this the most relatable to the current time as it is? And we want to get asses in seats, like in theaters. Yeah, we could do that. We want to get asses in like, seats.
For their bottom line, it's a non-issue. And also, like, I mean, I'm not saying that like Judd's a bottom line guy or Steve Carell is. Like, they want to make good movies, but that's what I think the thing is. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like when you're making it at the time, it's not like. What I do think is kind of funny is that the entire setting, like for the most part in this movie, is at a stereo store. And granted, you could look at it as like a Best Buy, and they're still around. But like, if you think of it as like a Radio Shack, if they're Radio Shack workers, like that doesn't even exist anymore. So that ages it a little bit. But yeah, like the VCR stuff, I think that's one of those things to look at and laugh at. Like, you know,
I love it too, remember that because it's like a time capsule. Because there's so few things that we can look at and kind of just see how the past was. You know, for us, like, it's not like in 2005, we were super conscious of everything that was going on, you know, and
well, I mean, I was 8. So
exactly. I mean, I don't know what you were doing when you were 8, but for me,
I don't think I watched this movie. At least, my parents showed it to me. I hope it was the edited version.
I mean, the first movie I watched was Saving Private Ryan. So say what you will about parenting skills, but
look, man, there was a lot of tits in this movie. Just a whole lot. That's something I forgot about. Was that they were just out too?
I really forgot.
Me too.
Like, even the speed dating scene. Like, I
also
had no idea that was coming.
Yeah, I think the thing too is that this is and we talked about this with Forgetting Sarah Marshall, but like this is a great rewatch movie. So obviously when you're in the rewatch, it's going to be like, you know, not showing all that, but it came back on. Sorry, I had some I have some video quality issues here. But yeah, for some reason it just went over my head that was going to be a thing.
Yeah, no, I feel like you forget about it every time before you rewatch this movie because it's really, I don't want to say it's done in a tasteful way, but it almost is done in a tasteful way where there's an abundance of it, but it's not so overstated that you're just distracted by it the entire time. Like it's so great as being a part of the movie that it just, I mean, you can't ignore it, but you also just forget that it's in there. It's like especially, I mean, even the scene when he gets locked in the like home theater.
Yeah.
And they're just blaring the porn in the background. And he's just like, guys, come on.
What you were saying with like tasteful, I think that the thing is like the point of it wasn't the tits, you know? I just keep saying tits. No, exactly. I feel like a weirdo. I don't know what to say. The nudity. Like the point isn't like, oh, here's this nudity. It's just like there is nudity here. But also it's like it kind of makes the shock factor a little higher. Like in some of the scenes.
You're talking about a 40-year-old who's a virgin. So to start out, it's not like it's an innocent theme to the movie. So basically talking about porn and all of this nudity and everything like that is essentially unavoidable. I mean, and that's what makes it so great is that it's in a way exposing how over-sexualized everything is in our world from the point of view of a virgin. Like even when he's walking down the street and there's the bus with the perfume or whatever it is on the side of it and he's running away from it, just things like that. It's just like every eruption. It's just surrounding you at all times. It's in your face. It's all over. And we become kind of desensitized to it. I mean,
Yeah,
I feel it.
that's something like I was watching it and I was like, and this is something I did think about before, but I wouldn't even think about it. But if you frame it in like there's this 40-year-old virgin that's trying to, well, actually said that he's not going to try to have sex. Of course, when you see all those billboards, like that's what's going to be on your mind. It's definitely was something that just kind of hits you in the face,
Oh yeah. And I mean, so one thing too about this movie is I do like how they kind of highlighted the nice guy as
Yeah.
like it's the ballad of the nice guy. It's just like
I'd say so.
there's hope for everyone. I mean, you could be a 40-year-old virgin, literally the name of the movie, and there's hope for you. I mean, don't give up. And just don't sacrifice yourself basically for something that's not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's like a common theme in Judd's movies basically is I was watching an interview with him, or he was kind of breaking something down, and he said that Mindy Kaling asked him that in an interview, like what makes a Judd Apatow movie? And she was like, I feel like everyone is stuck at some point. So like I think that it's something that Judd likes exploring is like I guess an underdog story. Like at some point, or for whatever reason, someone's up against it. Like there's something that they have to overcome. And sure, that's a very common theme in basically every single movie, no doubt about it. Like the common archetype or whatever. But I think that that's a common theme in all of our favorite Judd movies. Is like I feel like it's kind of an underdog story, and I think it's just something he does really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just highlighted so well throughout. It's just you're rooting for the guy the whole time. I mean, similar to Forgetting Sarah Marshall, you're just rooting for this destroyed guy to come back and gather his life together. It's just, and then there's a little bit of spice to it. There's all these hilarious things in it. Even like, I mean, we'll talk later probably about everything and all the characters, but Jane Lynch's character even is so great in it.
Jane Lynch was great. Yeah. Wait, so before we go into Inexclusive exclusives, what I want to do is because we referenced it and I forgot to just say it right off the bat because we put the two up against each other last week. And what I want to know is, so I said 40-year-old virgin over Forgetting Sarah Marshall, and you said the opposite. What are we thinking now after the rewatch?
I am staying true to what I said. I'm staying true. What are you thinking? I'll say
this. I love this movie so much. But
there's everything before a but doesn't matter. Let's hear it.
Right. This kind of does though. Because
let's hear it.
I don't think I necessarily changed my stance, but I do think that I feel less strongly about it now.
Really?
Like I used to think that it was like a 1-2. I think it's more of a 1A, 1B. I think I might even have said 1A, 1B.
I think we said that exact thing last week. Yeah.
Just because I'm not original at all. But, like watching through it, I was like, so I think actually this sounds really dumb, but I watched half the movie last night, half the movie today. And I think that there's like the second half of this movie just makes it. Like, I think it's like a chef's kiss at the end. But the first half, I'm like, I could see the case as even for myself being like, no, I actually like Forgetting Sarah Marshall more. But that's just because I love both these movies. Like, I felt like I needed to address it because if, when you put two movies up against each other, you can't just not address it after the rewatch.
No, especially. I mean, for me, I know I said like 40-year-old virgin is a strong understudy to Forgetting Sarah Marshall.
Yeah, and they're different.
I'm gonna absolutely different. Even like you can tell in the camera quality. I mean, what were they 2 or 3 years apart? But I mean, this one I mean, you could tell they were using like some 4K shit and Forgetting Sarah Marshall, whereas this one just feels a little bit older.
That's what's so weird about this movie is like we forget about like, well, granted, again, we were 8 when this movie came out.
Yeah.
So like, but the technological advancements that we made in that time period are pretty crazy. So I think that that's almost what dates this movie too. Like I said, like what we were talking about with VHSs, like, even to have that conversation of like, oh, these will be dead in a few years. Like you shouldn't get them now. Like we were still having that conversation, and now that's insane.
Yeah. Even okay, so when Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen are playing Mortal Kombat, number one, we can see how far video games have come since then. Because that Mortal Kombat, that was crazy. Just looking at that, now you see it today, and it's literally HD ripping somebody's head off and putting on a spike.
But there is something that's weird within guys, I think, and that like I never played Mortal Kombat regularly, but everyone can love playing Mortal Kombat. Like, I'm talking like the one back in the day, like when you do have the like kind of bad graphics, and then the finishing move, the finish him. Like, I feel like there's something innate just about like smashing buttons to see if you can beat your friend, and then just like head on the spike after.
Dude, I'm convinced that nobody knows how to play the game, and everybody just smashes buttons.
There are probably like those crazy people that like are insane at it, but no, it's a button smashing game. You just smash buttons and see what happens.
And then you hit a move and you try and figure out how the fuck you did it for the rest of the game. And it's just like, you hit one move and then be like, oh my God, what did I do? I don't even know where my fingers were.
You can't figure it out.
But
it's crazy combos. But no, sorry. What were you going to say about
so when Paul Rudd and it's so 2005, but when Paul Rudd and this, very 2005, got to think of it from that scope. This whole scene, very different time, 15 years ago, almost 16 years ago, really crazy. But while they're playing Mortal Kombat, Seth Rogen and Paul Rudd are going back and forth with each other. If you've seen the movie, you know what they're saying. They're like, I know how I know you're gay. And then they just keep going at each other. And for me, when I rewatched this, now in today, like you obviously, can't do that, and you frame it in a different way. You use other insults. But just the idea of that scene in movies that we've watched so far, I think that could have been the most fun scene to film, because it was all, improv. It was intended to actually be like a single line of dialogue when they're playing. And Paul Rudd and Seth Rogen, being the insanely good improvisers that they are, just sat there and just kept going and going and going. And it just made the scene so much longer, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, honestly, that's the other thing too, is like, even from a standpoint of the time period, that I guess you do have to look at humor subjectively, but at the same time, it's not like there was any malicious intent at all.
No.
Like, you still, like, now you don't make those jokes, but like the jokes that they were making, especially off the cuff, were objectively clever. So like, you can't really look at it and be like, oh, I'm going to get mad at a lot of people could. I don't think either of us, I'll speak for myself, I can't look at it and get mad at that. Like, now it's just like the sense of humor is different. Unless you're going for shock value, it's not going to be funny. In 2005, like, looking at it from that aspect and just knowing that they were just sitting there riffing, and like that they were so good that they had to leave them in the movie. That's something pretty cool.
I know. And just to appreciate, whether whatever side of the fence you may be on,
right.
And there's a line in the sand for what you can joke about today and everything like that. Objectively, looking at this, for them to transform a scene that was supposed to be a single line, like, just think about that.
Yeah.
This is very similar to what Matthew McConaughey says he did in Dazed and Confused. Like, he took what was supposed to be one line or one page and turned it into 6 weeks of work, where these guys took one line, literally 3 seconds of a movie, and turned it into probably a minute, 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah. And it was a plot progressing kind of scene too. So like, it should have just been kind of a quick throwaway, but they made it one of the most, not one of the most iconic scenes, because we'll get into those for sure.
Yeah.
But no, honestly, what they did with it, it's like admirable. They were able to make that something that it wasn't even really intended to be. But I'd say we should move on to Inexclusive exclusives at this point. I'm going to start it out really quick. This might be known by a lot of people, but I think actually, no, I don't think many people would know this, but this entire movie, the idea of it came from when Steve Carell started out in Second City in Chicago.
Mhm.
He had this recurring sketch where he would be this guy playing poker at a table with a bunch of other guys. And throughout dialogue, they would slowly figure out that he had no clue what he was talking about with sex. So they literally, if you rewatched or you remember the movie, they kept that scene in. So that is the scene where you get it figured out. And that's what something I thought was so cool, that Judd Apatow and Steve Carell co-wrote this to be an entire movie, like one cohesive, huge, long piece. But it started out from Steve Carell just being a hilarious mind at Second City and just making a fantastic premise.
Yeah.
And so much so that like the original sketch made it as a scene in the movie.
So how many of those sketches did he do? Do you know? Was it just like the one that he did in Second City, or was it like an evolving idea? Because now
I think it was kind of that. Like I think he started performing it at Second City, and then when they needed something to kind of like fill in, it started evolving.
Yeah.
But I think it was also like kind of like a character of his. But I mean, for the most part, if you think about it, it was one sketch. Like
Yeah,
it
exactly.
wasn't this whole thing that like they had a running bit on, I guess.
And that's like I would say that's the scene that sparks the entire movie. So I can see, Steve Carell and Judd Apatow having that sketch. And when they go to write the script, they really just base the whole thing. I mean, you start usually with a script. I've never written a script personally. I don't, claim to be any type of expert. This is an assumption. Yes, soon. We're work in progress. I'm down. But I assume that they took the sketch. They were like, how can we expand this into obviously a bigger picture, which is what you do with, any idea you have, you start with a central point. But for them to make that scene first and make it so funny where the bags of sand line comes in.
Yeah. Bags of sand, that was supposedly the best line from the original sketch that they had to keep in there. Like that was the one where it tips people off to be like, what? Well, obviously just like it happens in the movie. But like,
yeah.
So I think that's another thing too, when you think about sketch writing, to be able to develop it into a 2-hour idea, like you have to characterize that character so well. So I think that speaks to Carell's writing ability, because you don't just kind of happen upon that and have Judd Apatow be like, oh yeah, we should make that a movie. Let's do a ton of work. You kind of say, I love this idea. I love this character. Let's explore it with a full script. If that makes sense.
Yeah. And I feel like there's not too many of those, that are actually successful in their attempt to take something like an SNL skit and
Night at the
transition
Roxbury, that's just a gag, basically. It's not like no disrespect to the Night at the Roxbury people, by the way, but it's not like a fully hashed out idea that they were able to execute.
I feel like a lot of Adam Sandler movies too come from, whether it was a voice or something like that, stems from a skit on SNL. So we can say that those are, a good transition from sketch to this. But I think in its own right, and I haven't looked at the list, so don't quote me. Quote me, because I'm going to say it. But don't quote me. In that, I think that this is the best movie to come out of a singular sketch.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say is I think we're saying that, sure, it's common, but this is basically a masterclass of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This is writing 101 if you want to take, it's got to be a strong character. Well, it's got to be a character that you can evolve, and Steve Carell is the perfect one. And to show just how committed he was to this role, can't even imagine. So the scene where Steve Carell, had all of his chest hair removed, obviously one of the most clippable scenes in any comedy movie ever. So there were 5 cameras for the shoot. Steve Carell's chest hair was legitimately ripped out. Okay. It took 7 weeks for it to grow back at least. And then
has to.
Steve Carell told Judd Apatow right before shooting that it has to be real. because it won't be funny if it's mocked up or special effects. Completely agree. Because if it's fake hair, you don't get that reaction. You don't get that same
the reaction
genuine,
of the three friends in the background is hilarious because those are genuine laughs, but they're also trying not to laugh. Like they are doing what the characters are supposed to be doing, but just in real life. Like,
and they had to do it because they had to do it in one shot. It's not like you can rip off chest hair. Like he's
especially when you go for
much.
the smile.
And then to have the bloody shirt afterwards, I'm just like
the bloody shirt
face.
was hilarious. Yeah,
that was good. And then one thing that was cool about this scene, actually, obviously, I mean, if you've watched this movie, you know that he yells Kelly Clarkson. You know, and so
that's like the most like memorable one for whatever reason. He said whatever, but everyone knows he said Kelly Clarkson.
It's just so random. I mean, it's just like you're actually okay. Imagine this: your chest hair is getting ripped out, genuinely. You're filming a movie. You have to have a genuine reaction, but it's a comedy movie, so you have to have like something funny to say. Obviously,
I mean
the scene itself is already funny. But to have Kelly Clarkson come to your mind and just be like, Kelly Clarkson.
Yeah.
But
so what actually happened there was Seth Rogen had writing responsibilities on set basically. And he was the one that it was like, we have to write a bunch of dirty stuff for him to scream. So that was like all him. And then they were like, hang on, we actually should probably think of some clean stuff. So he said he thinks like it was probably the American Idol season where Kelly Clarkson won, and he just wrote Kelly Clarkson down, and that becomes the biggest one, even in the unrated or whatever version.
Because it's so against the grain of what he was saying, everything like that. Because he's apologizing after he says everything else, and then it's like, oh, okay, finally a calm one. And then so for Kelly Clarkson. I didn't really know this until recently because I don't usually frequent daytime television, gonna be honest, not really my style. But Kelly Clarkson has a show. And then for her first episode, the person who introed her was Steve Carell yelling Kelly Clarkson, which is just like 15 years later.
Like, it's like we know that this is what she's remembered for. Maybe it's not what she's remembered for, but this is something that's very funny that she can be remembered for that she had nothing to do with.
She also wrote a few songs here and there.
One or two.
But definitely. Yeah,
no, she was good. She was good for sure.
She was quality. But yeah, I thought that whole scene and then to have it have this lasting effect on a real person is just hilarious. I mean,
no doubt. Going on to another fact. So someone that was Apatow's mentor was Gary Shandling, and he was talking to him about the movie, and Shandling actually told him that it was probably important for that with the final scene when he finally has sex, that his sex is better than his friends because he's in love. Like he thought that was a really good kind of message, or at least just interesting to explore. And then later that day, like when he was talking about it, he was talking with Steve Carell because obviously they were co-writers, and he was like, you know, it would be really funny if we sing a song. And then that's if it's not my favorite, like we'll talk about our favorites, that has to be 1B, like I said, with the two movies, 1A, 1B. But if they do like the Let the Sunshine In, or remember like the Age of Aquarius thing, they thought it would be so funny, and I think it turned out to be incredible. Like so funny. That's what I meant by the chef's kiss at the end. When I was watching that the first time, I started dying. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that. That it was just Steve Carell, like it was a produced music like behind him and all this crazy stuff. And all the people were in it. And then Jonah Hill actually in the cameo when he's trying to buy the weird boots with the goldfish was like, apparently he had to wear this like poncho and a beanie, and they were filming all day. So Jonah Hill had a heat stroke and had to go to the hospital while they were filming that.
For that role.
Yeah, like just to be like in a few minutes. And he didn't have a crazy career at that point, but like, I mean, listen, that's I would be
That was-
honored to get a heat stroke and go to the hospital if I was on that set.
Look, okay. Him being in there for 2 minutes, he might be one of my favorite characters in the entire movie.
Yeah. It doesn't get much better than him in that role.
He's just standing in the background while they're talking, just keeps going. But I want to buy these. She's just laughing like, we don't sell anything.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you cash so I can go put these on.
Yeah. I guess when they were
I'm
on the
sorry.
set of another movie, or actually, no, they were, I think, in a movie theater or just kind of in public somewhere. And Jonah Hill had just recently read the script for that character and was about to go in for an audition. And he saw Rogan in public and was just like, hey, by the way, I know you wrote this role. Like, I'm about to audition for this. And then actually ended up working out pretty well for him because they're like, oh, yeah, like I remember you. And it ended up being really good.
That's crazy to think that their long-standing, I feel like, movie and out of movie relationship kind of, I don't know if it started there, but it's in its infancy. Like, we get to see it in its infancy in this movie where Jonah Hill's in this movie a little bit. Seth Rogen is in this movie. They don't interact, but Rogen wrote the character. All the way to now, this, like, something like This Is the End, where they have their whole comedy crew and Jonah Hill's now the big star who they keep making fun of and everything like that. It's funny to see how that evolves over the years, where it went from Seth Rogen being like the main character or like a bigger role, the writer, to now Jonah Hill being like the guy.
Yeah.
And getting made fun of by
It's
them for it.
the guy they make fun of for being big.
Mr. Hollywood. Like, oh, you did a movie with Brad Pitt, eh? Oh, great for you.
Yeah. No, that's hilarious.
That for me was really good.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay, so we're going to move on to my second fact.
Yeah, let's do it.
So this film, I'm sure most of you know, Steve Carell also starred in The Office. The United States version of The Office, just to clarify, which obviously was an Emmy-winning powerhouse. So after the show's first season, though, and not many people kind of know about this, after the show's first season, the producers of The Office were a little worried that Steve Carell was coming across, rather than the kind of goofball and, you know, person who doesn't know as much. They were thinking that he's coming across as more nasty and menacing when they didn't want him to be that way.
Yeah.
So after this role, it was really pivotal because they used some of the elements from this movie to make Michael Scott, rather than the, nasty, menacing guy, into more of the buffoon, the clueless, rather than just more mean-spirited. And they really just used this role of his to rework the character in a way that was more conducive with what they wanted. And I'd say it worked out pretty well for them. I'm going to be honest.
Could you imagine, seriously, if they didn't make this movie and have to, well, granted, maybe the showrunners would have figured it out, sure. But to be able to look at this movie and be like, this is how you make Steve Carell an insanely funny, likable guy in this way, and just be like, take some elements here. And like for the showrunners to be able to kind of just like pick and choose there, like, I feel like that's what makes, and granted, you need the acting ability from Steve Carell. You need the show running ability and just like literally the aptitude to be like, this is how we want to do it and kind of pivot that way. Like, that makes The Office. And we won't get into The Office at all. Fantastic. I mean, best sitcom maybe ever.
Can you imagine not having The Office? What would people base their personalities on? Like, do you know?
Could you imagine if there weren't people that had number ones or world's best boss mugs or Dunder Mifflin shirts? Could you imagine?
I can't even imagine.
What would people meme?
Did you know that the factory is not actually in Scranton, Pennsylvania? That's a fact. It's in California.
Oh, I've been to
It's
Scranton. Trust me,
crazy.
they're probably yeah. So my next exclusive. So
Love The Office.
you mentioned Jane Lynch before. Jane
Mhm.
Lynch, absolutely fantastic in all of her movies, especially this role. But
Yeah.
the manager was originally supposed to be played by a man. So Steve Carell's wife, who Nancy Carell, Nancy Walls was her maiden name. She actually played Maria, who was the health clinic counselor.
Mhm.
But his wife basically said, "You know what? You should actually think about Jane Lynch for this role because I think Lynch and Carell worked together in Second City." So she read this role and was like, "This she'd actually be super good in this." And I honestly think like one of the best characters in the entire movie. Like
Absolutely.
that was an incredible casting decision by the writer's wife, who obviously she's an actress in her own right. She knows the industry. Now I don't know if she does casting stuff, honestly, but the foresight to do that is super impressive. And then I think the most memorable part about Lynch's character is just that she was trying to have sex with Steve Carell once she realized that he was a virgin the whole time.
The whole time.
So the one of the funniest parts of the entire movie, honestly, to me, was when she was telling him, like, yeah, this Guatemalan gardener when I was 15. So I actually forgot before. She was like, I had this body at 15. Could you imagine? And then she goes on to tell this story. And she says that he sang her a beautiful Guatemalan love song. And apparently the only thing that she did was she remembered speech or something that she had to give in Spanish. Like maybe it was like an oral exam or whatever, and it was from her textbook. But the thing that she actually sings just translates to, when I clean my room, I can't find anything. Where are you going in such a hurry? To the soccer game. Like it's supposed to be this beautiful Guatemalan theme song, and they just like, nope, this is what we're saying.
Stringing random sentences together.
Yeah.
I mean, her character is, I'll touch on it in a little, but her character is unbelievable. And I think that this movie gets taken down a few pegs if it's a man playing that role. Honestly, I don't think it's in the same realm because you needed that manager to be separate from the pack and kind of have their own narrative versus coming kind of being another one who's like, we got to get you laid, or like someone who's kind of an overseer.
100%.
Trying to fuck Steve Carell the whole time. I mean, that's just a little aspect is so great.
No doubt. No,
she's
I absolutely
perfect. Her in this, I mean, on my top 10 list is also Role Models, where she is the head of the like rehabilitation kind of like childcare service. Amazing. She's great. She's so good. But I mean, we'll touch on that in a little. But I'll get into another great character who they kind of rethought, we can say, after the first dailies were shot. So Paul Rudd, we know him, we love him. He's been a huge aspect of the pod. I mean, we can't thank Paul Rudd enough for his work.
I mean, you can't dislike Paul Rudd.
I know. He's ageless. Literally, the guy looks the same as he did in this movie. I don't know how that's possible. He had like
Insane.
He has not aged one bit. One bit.
He got not Paul Rudd. He got Rob Lowe's skin serum or whatever Rob Lowe is doing now. Put it on there.
Mean,
him and Rob Lowe are just like the same.
Look, Rob Lowe is, I mean, he's awesome. That guy lived the life. And he's just like, he was the most attractive man in Hollywood. He literally rode the bus with the Lakers.
Look,
he rode the bus with the Lakers, and he was a 25. I mean,
that's a beautiful man.
He's up there. Paul Rudd, who we think of as this ageless god in Hollywood now. So after watching the first dailies from filming, right, Universal was like, Paul, you're a little too fat. You got to lose some weight. You got to go on a diet. Yeah. So they forced him to go, not forced him, but Paul Rudd had to go on a diet for this role. And if you look at the dating sequence, because that's one of the first things that they filmed, the speed dating sequence, you can see in it that he's a little chubbier than the other portions of the movie. And I know you mentioned to me earlier, and it's something that I didn't realize. He really didn't eat for 48 hours at one point.
Apparently not. And like, I don't think that they mandated that or anything, or granted, I didn't look into it. That's one of those things. Well, let's breeze past that. That's not good.
It's a wives'
You're
tale.
supposed to eat. Yeah. Like it's weird that they made him, but yeah, there was a lot of studio oversight in this movie. And that was one of them. It's weird thinking that the hot dude, Paul Rudd, now is like, he was fat back then and they made him lose weight, but yeah, crazy.
I mean, that in itself is just, it's wild knowing. I mean, movies being filmed in themselves are kind of crazy because of the transformations that can happen throughout. Like, it's supposed to take place over a certain period of time, but like,
yeah,
from one scene that's filmed in 1 month to another, there could be, X amount of stubble even, or there could be this, there could be that. But for him to, them watching the first scenes and be like, no, go on and diet.
Yeah. And like he noticeably is definitely fatter.
Yeah.
And like they all look a little different, but what are you gonna do?
Hey, you got to do what you got to do,
Yeah. Let's move on to our favorites here. We'll try to breeze through them. So we always start. I'm gonna go character for character. Well, we're gonna go character for character. We're gonna go scene for scene and then line for line. So my favorite character, I think I gotta give it to Seth Rogen, to Cal, the not grizzled, but kind of just like, stereotypical manly kind of guy. Doesn't really care about his job, doesn't really care about much other than getting laid, it seems, tattoos, all that kind of thing. Then like it randomly in the middle of the movie, we figure out he's a screenwriter. Like, obviously not like too successful or anything, but something that I actually thought was really good about his character is like you had the easy stuff to make him funny in terms of him being a guy's guy, one of those. But then randomly he tells him how to talk to girls in a way that actually makes like a lot of sense. It's the only good advice Steve Carell got like the entire movie, honestly, at least up until that point. And I think that was something that was interesting is like, it kind of made his character be looked at as someone who kind of just wants to live the way he's living, and he is very content, and he's able just to like live amongst these characters, be funny, do whatever he kind of wants. And I don't know, there's something we talked about it before too, like he's the most redeemable character to me.
Yeah, definitely. He's the most multi-dimensional, I think, in that like you have an assumption about him at first and then it changes, but it kind of stays the same, whereas the other ones kind of just devolve. I think he's definitely a top character in this movie, and he probably helped write it for himself. So
yeah, no, he did. He had writing responsibilities, so I think that he probably was able to help out there. But I think when you look at Paul Rudd and Ramani Malco in these roles, the difference there is that they have last second redemptions, basically. Like they are obviously likable the whole time, but like I think that they just do more with Seth Rogen's character the whole time
throughout. Definitely.
Yeah. What about yours?
I mean, okay, so mine is gonna be Paula. This is Jane Lynch. Yeah, I think she's awesome.
One of us had to say her because she's hilarious in this.
She's so good. I mean, from just the little quips and everything like that, the Guatemalan love song. I mean, trying to fuck him the entire time. Just after she finds out he's a virgin, it's so good. She's so good in playing who she's meant to play. Like this role was basically crafted for her, and I'm so glad that she actually got to play it. I mean, what more can you say? There's so many good lines just thrown in there. It's just we covered a lot of the best scenes from her before and touched on all that. So I don't want to rehash everything, but I think definitely top 2 character.
Well, that's the other scene that features both of our favorites. Just they kind of interact. It's a random throw-in scene, and she's just like, "Hey, do you have any weed?" And he's like, yeah, I have something. How much? She's like, I just want to get baked for a week. Just turn on or take the phone off the hook. I'm going to take some vacation. Just going to sit in my apartment and get baked all week. Like there's something like to that too. It's like, we only saw her from this managerial standpoint, even though if she's like trying to have sex with the person that works for her, whatever, but like there's like a character break in there that also helps out her characterization that I think is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, Jane Lynch, absolutely fantastic favorite character. Scene for scene, we'll move on to. So my favorite scene is probably the health clinic. So when they're all there, Steve Carell has to be there to, I guess, at least sit with her daughter and talk about being a virgin or talk about birth control, anything like that. And
Kat Dennings.
Kat
Dennings from Two Broke Girls. This was I don't know if it was one of the first ones, but yeah. So she is trying to have sex with her boyfriend, and then there are just so many funny lines because there are different characters in it. I'm gonna say a few later, but it's just like this whole scene is full of really good quick quips and just like really funny. Hey, look how ridiculous some of these people are, and then at the same time, you realize that like they are able to like each other. So it's kind of nice from that aspect. Like you look at it in terms of like the rom-com. It's actually a good scene, but also in terms of comedy, I think that it delivers some of the best lines. 100%. Yeah, Steve Carell's wife being in it is just a little like added sprinkle on top. But everyone represented in that scene is so good in their own way, just kind of going around the table and throwing in their little bits. There's so many lines, and I mean, you'll definitely get to some as we'll see in a couple minutes. But my favorite scene, and you can call it, as mainstream as you want, whatever. It's fucking awesome. It's the waxing scene. There's no better scene in my eyes to me, than watching that movie. I get no more joy from watching that scene, and I don't know if that's, an interesting way to look at a man getting waxed.
What I think it is that the genuine reactions. Because when you sit there and someone's laughing, you also laugh. Like it's laughter is contagious, but laughter is actually contagious. So when you see someone, especially, there's nothing that makes you crack up more. It's like when, Fallon didn't make a living out of it and he was on SNL and he wasn't supposed to be cracking up. Like when someone breaks character, it's very funny. And with these people, and it's not even breaking character because it's not like they would be sitting there not laughing. Like them trying to hold back laughter, but at the same time giving it it's such an enjoyable thing to watch.
Yeah.
And even though Carell's going through pain,
so much pain.
Also, with this
real pain,
something I didn't mention yet, he has a lot of chest hair. Now look, I'm a tough guy. If someone say Dan Blazarian, someone who definitely isn't compensating for something, if they looked at my chest, they would definitely not think too highly of me. I'll say that. But Steve Carell, that stuff's it's up on his clavicle. We're talking collarbones, hairy collarbones.
He has a bearskin rug on his chest. The entire thing is basically Rogaine foam. It's okay. People who are going bald, not to call any people out specifically, people who are going bald.
I'm not going bald. My barber
I didn't
told
say
me.
you. Oh, Kevin, you seem to be very defensive. I'm not calling you out. I said I'm not.
I told you. My barber told me. No, it's a cowlick. Said you're not going bald.
Did you just say it's a cowlick?
I don't know how to cowlick.
Cowlick. Well, either way, they can do if he ever goes bald, they could do plugs from his chest, just straight up.
Easy. I think, is that what they did after the first season of The Office? He got hair plugs in season 2. They took the wax from this movie because it was season 1. We put it together.
We're just yep. I mean, that's where his hair came from. All right, so we figured it out.
Glad we got to the bottom of
it
that.
out. Okay, good.
All right, you ready to move on to line for
I'm
line?
ready. Mhm.
All right. So I'll start it out here. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna go for 2. So it's from my favorite scene. The funniest part of that whole scene to me is when the kid, when he says, a Jewfro or whatever, the Jewish kid. He's like,
You can say it. You can say it.
oh yeah, right. Forgot. But so
I'll
actually
allow
it's
it.
when they're talking about different forms of sex. She's like, oh, you could do oral sex, and he goes, sounds like my Saturday night. He goes, the dad goes, shut up, Seth, you were at temple. That was shut up, Seth, we went to temple. And then he asked the same kid goes, excuse me, do you have any extra large condoms? And he goes, Seth, you have a tiny penis. just airing out his son, who's being a complete jackass, like trying to be so cool at this health clinic. Two of the funniest lines in the whole movie.
Yeah,
those stick out for sure.
That, and then when he goes, oh, you're a virgin? I'd tap that. He goes, Seth, we don't say that. What do you?
Yeah. What are you talking about, Seth?
All right. So a line that got me was within the first, I'd say 15, 20 minutes. And it's when he meets the girl at the bar, Nikki, who's played by Leslie Mann. And
Judd Apatow's wife.
They go in the car and they're driving. Obviously, she has the breathalyzer in the car, which in itself is unreal. Mm-hmm. They're just driving. And something about this got me so bad where she just goes, let's get some fucking French toast.
The way she delivers that is hilarious. Yeah.
It was so good.
Yeah.
I was actually laughing out loud to myself watching it. Just let's get some fucking French toast.
Again, every single, especially the first ones, every single one of your lines, if I'm watching the movie, I know exactly what you're gonna pick. Like I saw the fucking French toast thing, and I was like, that's Winnie's. I'm not even gonna bother with that one. It's easy. Oh, quick and exclusive here. A little bonus for the folks. So it was actually Leslie Mann's idea to throw up on him at the end. So originally they were just supposed to get pulled over originally they were supposed to get pulled over by a cop, and they were supposed to figure out that she had a gun beneath her seat like the whole time. But she thought it would be a ton funnier if she threw up on him. And so she threw up like some strawberry yogurt kind of concoction, just spit it right on him.
You could tell that it looked like some Danimals. That would fit with the time too. Some nice Danimals, some strawberry Danimals.
Doubt. Wait,
Absolutely.
Could have been Gogurt. You think it might have been Gogurt? 2005 was a big year for Gogurt, probably.
That was a big year for Danimals too. Do you remember those shits? Right. The little containers that you pop the thing off of?
Oh,
those things are fire.
Yeah,
Wish they still had those. I'm sure they do somewhere in Canada. But what's your next line?
They're 15 years behind everything. The next line is when they were trying to get it to finally happen for him. So they were like, let's take matters in our own hands. And they hired a lady of the night, an escort. Yep. And then he said that she was so another thing, 2005, they used a word for a transgendered person. But they were like, how do you know that she was one of those? And he goes, because her hands were as big as Andre the Giant's. And this is what cracks me up, not the Andre the Giant's thing, and her balls were as big as her Adam's apple. That just is so fun. Like, obviously both male things that just, makes me crack up whenever I hear that.
Her balls were as big as her Adam's apple.
Yeah. Her balls were as big as her Adam's apple is my number 2.
So good. For me, my number 2 comes from our guy, Paul Rudd. When he's doing the speed dating, when he's a little chubbier, as we mentioned, which is not his own fault. He's amazing no matter how you spin it.
We stand Paul Rudd.
Oh, absolutely. Michael Cera and now Paul Rudd. But when he's talking to Mindy Kaling and she goes, I'm just not a whore. I'm not a whore just because I didn't like you. And he's just, after they're going back and forth, he just goes, this is so us.
This is so us. Just like so in denial. It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's funny that like we just accepted Paul Rudd for kind of what he was in this movie. Like obviously we thought he was crazy, but the 4-month relationship of that to like be over for 2 years is so insanely ridiculous and like so not believable. Yeah. But it's just like, whatever, Paul Rudd.
This is so us.
Yeah.
She's like psycho.
Yeah. You got an honorable mention? You want to get
I did have an honorable mention because my guy Mooj comes in and it's a little joke throughout. And
he's my character, by the way. He's my honorable mention character. I was going to pick him, and then I was like,
So was I, because he was just so funny. He's in it for like 3 minutes, but...
He's actually in it more than I remembered.
Yeah, that's true. He's
in it for like just quick hitters, like just quick comic relief. But
the shit that he, like the go fuck a goat throughout.
Yeah, there it is.
Got me every single time. Where he's like, "You're not coming to our party," and then he's leaving. He goes, "Go fuck a goat." He's like, "Why you always tell me to fuck a goat, man?"
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's my favorite when Robert Balco is just like, "Why you always tell me to fuck a goat, man?" Good guy. Good guy.
Goat? Yeah, Mooj.
Yep, honorable mention character, honorable mention that line. So overall, again, we did Forgetting Sarah Marshall. We did this movie. Very different, but also similar, obviously. This is just a few years earlier, which I think makes it a lot different in terms of convention, all that stuff, lines, maybe like dating it and stuff. But I don't. It doesn't get too much better than this movie. It's one of the best comedies of all time, and I think that's pretty much all there is to say. I think we could wrap it up.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I'd still going strong with my understudy role, but definitely glad I rewatched. Like, there's so many gems in here. Yeah,
absolutely. All right, so I guess we'll wrap it up. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Hope that everyone is safe. Kind of, if you're traveling, travel safe. If you're not, well, next year should be back to normal. So
be smart, be safe, be happy. Walmart.
We're not going to tell you what to do, though. So
no.
Yeah, do what you want.
Personal freedoms. Do what you want. Do what you feel.
There. That's a TikTok thing, right?
I think that was a line from a movie, but we'll figure it out next week.
Never mind. All right. Regardless, I'm Kevin.
I'm Winnie.
We'll see.
Back up, Terry. Back up.
Put it in reverse, Terry.
Put it in reverse, Terry.